Q&A session. So, wait, you can go ahead and take a seat.
Look at you.
All right, so this session is the employee Q&A session that the board set up for employees to be able to have the opportunity to ask questions. As the email you got stated, please have your badge visible if you'd like to ask a question. And so tonight, Dr. Impeartrice just finished up his interview. If you weren't here, he had about an hour and a half of questions. But this is an opportunity for you as employees to ask some questions. So what we'll do is, in just a moment, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Impeartrice. He's going to have about 5 minutes or so where he can just kind of share a recap of who he is personally and professionally if you missed the interview. And then I've got Elizabeth Benson over here, Director of Continuous Improvement, and Justin Goldberg over here, our Director of Communications and Marketing. They'll have microphones, and if you'd like to ask a question, it's as simple as raising your hand, and we will come find you at the microphone. I do ask that, I should have started with this. We are live streaming, as you know from the email, so just be cognizant that you are on camera right now. And I do ask that when you ask questions, you speak at the microphone so those at home can hear you. All right, Dr. Impeartrice.
Okay, so I graduated from college in, I'll say 1989, went to Fresno State. I'm originally from California, taught for 8 years in San Jose, most of the time in either behavior classrooms or very low social economic schools, like 98%. Low social economic, so I did special ed and taught history. And then my daughter was 2 years old and married a teacher, and the price of living went crazy in California. So we bought a book, 50 Best Places to Raise Your Family, and 26 years ago came to Tennessee, in the state, and got jobs. Started out at was Westminster as a 6th grade teacher, is now Curriever. And after 1 year, they had 2 6th grade classes. They put 2 teachers in one class, they put me with an aide. I had the lower achieving of the 2 student classes, and we outscored them. And so then they wanted to make me an intervention teacher for the following year. So they sent me all over the country. So I learned about Linda Bell's, the LIPS program, Orton Gillingham. There was a body awareness program from Phil McGinnis, just on crossing your midline and how to teach reading. It was the most wonderful summer of my life as far as learning goes. So I taught the middle school and the high school students. Now, Curriever was this big old building now, right? Then it was in the Westminster Church, and I'm teaching kids with sound ensemble issues. And I'm in a breezeway in a hallway where the pre-Kers ride their bikes outside and make all the noise. So it was not ideal for the money those parents were paying, but we made progress. We made real progress. And so I've done both private and public school. And so St. Paul Christian Academy started a new position for an assistant head for academic affairs. And I really liked the headmistress. She was progressive. So I've told people I've never really sought jobs for the position. I've sought it for the values and the experience. And we matched. And I didn't know the national search or 26 candidates. I wasn't even done with my leadership. I was going to Dragon, and I got the job. So I spent 2 years at St. Paul Christian Academy as the assistant head for academic affairs, which in a private school would be like a private school. The headmistress is dealing with fundraising, capital campaigns, all that you're dealing with day to day. But I came to a crossroads. Even though it was a very progressive private school, my heart was with special ed kids. That was my background. And there were times I had to transition a family out because they couldn't learn at the rate that was needed at our private school. And so after 2 years, I said, I can't continue to do this. This doesn't align. Spiritually it aligns with me, but it doesn't align with my philosophy. So at the same time I'm deciding to try to make a career change, Franklin Special School District opens a school choice K-8 year-round school called Poplar Grove. And I taught year-round school in California, but in California, they did year-round school just to have 25% more kids in the class, right? You just save money at 4 tracks. So the idea of doing a 1-track year-round school, the research just really intrigued me. And then the principal had actually been an elementary director in Williamson County. So to go ahead and partner with a great leader that I knew in Williamson County that had opened many schools, I got the job. And then was appointed to Freedom Intermediate School in the same district, which is a 5-6 school. A month after I was appointed, it became under No Child Left Behind, targeted for African Americans, subgroup and proficiency in math, and economically disadvantaged in both math and RLA. And we had a 3-year average of a D in science and F in reading. And so I took over, and I'm not going to go through my interview, but through a process of listening, through a process of analyzing data, through a process of using best practice. Within a year, this school was the highest performing school in the Franklin Special School District. Always value added, to the point that that 3-year average of an F became an A. So, and the district had all A's in value added, we were the only school that had all A's in value added. So that doesn't happen because of one person. That happens with dedicated, hardworking teachers that want an opportunity to be in a situation where they can succeed and have the information they need to succeed. So after being at the school for 4 years, I was hired as a director of middle schools here, where I served under BJ Worthington as chief academic officer. When he became when he became director of schools, he named me chief academic officer. Then I went through a change in my career. I really did. I put a lot of pressure on myself. I made some mistakes through leadership, in that BJ was such a powerful leader. I think we all have BJ stories. That instead of doing my own leadership style, it wasn't broken, so don't fix it, right? So I tried to model after what BJ had done, and it wore me out. And it got into a place where I wasn't enjoying the job anymore. And that's not BJ's fault. That's not anybody's fault, but my fault. I didn't stay true to my leadership, right? And so I stepped away from this district for a year, almost a full year. Then came back as a special ed coordinator, loved special ed. I was advocating for special ed students, trying to help special ed teachers. And then Brian Johnson left, and the chief academic officer position was open. So I went to Miller House and said, look, if you don't want me to apply, I won't. I love my job, but I think I still have the trust of the principals here. I think I still have the trust of the people that I've worked with here. And sure enough, he offered me the interim job. It was supposed to be until May. He took the interim tag off in October. And that's where I'm at. I'm here now as the chief academic officer. And I've enjoyed that work tremendously. We've accomplished a lot as far as innovation, but that doesn't happen without a wonderful staff, and most of the principals that are exemplary, and then the hard work, the backbone is the teachers and what they do within the classroom. So that's a brief introduction.
Thank you, Dr. Impeartrice. All right, so first questions. I know we have questions. We're back 4th night in a row. So who would like to go first? Melinda, you want to start with 3?
Dr. Impeartrice, I have a 2-part question.
Sure.
I know the answer to the first one, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you support pre-K? And my second part to that is, what would your plan be to implement universal pre-K here in Montgomery County, and also address the capacity issues that we have at elementary to add those programs?
I'm sorry, that's the last part of that question.
How would you address the capacity issues that we have at elementary levels for those programs?
Right. So So do I support pre-K? That answer is yes. My whole career has been based on intervention. So the earlier the intervention, the better. Do I support universal pre-K throughout the system? Philosophically, yes. But we've got to have a budget to do it, right? And so congratulations, by the way. I think we've just been accepted for some VPK, so I appreciate the work that's gone into that. So, you know, the state at one time under Bredesen was very strongly supporting, you know, universal pre-K. And now the legislators are a little mixed on providing that funding. So any funding that we would use to try to implement that would have to come through our local funding or general purpose fund. So I think it's a worthy goal. I think early intervention is the key, but it definitely would have to roll out strategically, and it would have to reach those priorities of being the top priority within the school system. Could I live with that as a top priority? I could, but I've got other departments that have top priorities too. Do I think it's impactful for students? Yes. Capacity issues. We're building our first school in about 8 years, so we're excited about that. And then we've got a high school coming along the way, and a couple more years later. In elementary school, I think we've done a wonderful job of advocating for school additions. And I think, you know, where we need additions to support pre-K, the pre-K funding we have, we need to be working on that, no doubt. But philosophically, the earlier you intervene, the better. And especially for those most needy students that are not, for whatever reason, as enriched at home as others. So definitely believe in pre-K. You know I support your work, and I not only support your work, I value what you bring to our instruction department. Appreciate you getting some more pre-K opportunities for us.
Next question.
Good evening, Dr. Impeartrice. I'm Denise Smith Martinez.
Yes.
I serve at Kenwood Middle as an English teacher, and I've served in this district since 2007, on and off times because of military moves. But through my conversations at various schools and with various educators, this question has come up, and through my service through lots of leadership academies and other academies that I've been through with this district. The Tennessee Department of Education compiled data which includes that only 13% of educators in Tennessee are educators of color, and only 20% of our administrators are of color. Now, we know about your Grow Your Own programs, and I benefited from sitting in on your retention and recruitment plan, but to go deeper with educators of color, how do you envision CMCSS retaining our quality and qualified educators and administrators of color? And how should CMCSS connect and act on this inequity across this domain?
Sure. And I think, you know, by our work and the presentations we've done, that I feel the same way I feel about that the teachers in this district need to represent the community. And when they do, then it provides those students hope, opportunity, modeling, and that's important. And so our last pipeline, traditional recruiting across the state, I'm not just talking about Clarksville. When we use traditional recruiting, even going out to HBCUs and Hispanic universities, when we do traditional recruiting across the state, and it's matching this district, we get 16% ethnically diverse teachers. So traditional recruiting is important. Providing opportunities to recruit traditionally is highly important. But I don't know that you're going to solve the diversity issue just from traditional recruiting. We've tried that. Bonuses are important, but there's always going to be another district that adds another incentive for bonus. So the representation of teachers and leaders in this district, of our students, to me needs to be a systemic approach. If you invest in your community, then your teachers will stay in your community. They'll serve the kids of this community, and so will your leaders. So our grand vision with the Grow Your Own is we also have a leadership residency program. And you can qualify for the leadership residency program after 5 years of teaching. So if through Grow Your Own teachers are about 41% right now, as opposed to 16%. After 5 years of teaching, we've got a greater pool to grow diverse leaders. Leaders from this community that have invested in this community, that know these kids. So I would never discount the efforts that are going on with traditional recruiting. I just think they're very challenged. They're very challenged to get the candidates to whatever community that's outside their own community. Doesn't mean we stop doing it. It doesn't mean that we don't stop looking at when candidates do come here or are growing from here. Like you said, how do we retain them? I'm very much in support of Michael Clark's and HR's mentoring program. So providing a mentor, not for instruction, just to check in and say, how are you doing? Can I connect you with some people in the community? It's not an easy adjustment to make, especially if minority candidates come from outside our system. We want to connect them so that they've got a base of people that they can rely on, that they can socialize with, that they can learn from, that can be their advocates of how this system works. So I'm very much in support of the work that HR has done. In fact, we have supported Michael's work. We've shared it with our principals. He's met with us. Love to see any kind of expansion. And do know that he's got a cadre of minority teachers that consult with him, Envision with him, and would be very, very interested in the ideas coming from that group as to how we can better have equity of teachers and employees. Now, I will tell you, as far as employees go, our apprenticeship work provides the same opportunity, right, in our internship work. So we just partnered with Nashville State on a desktop support pathway in which out of Northeast High School, part of their academy, there will be a pathway for students to have a program designed just for us, for desktop support, that also introduces them to programming and networking in case they want to go on further. But then they'll have apprenticeships in our own organization at Nashville State. So when you think about those 38,000 computers that need to be re-imaged in the summer, and our technology department doing all that work, when in an apprenticeship, you're learning your trade. Think about those situations in the school when a teacher may need some support, and we have limited technology support throughout the district. If they need something right away, we can expand that support. So we are kicking off that, and that should represent members of our community. When new high school opens in Kirkwood, it's going to be a transportation academy. We're going to be growing our own diesel mechanics, light maintenance, logistics. They will all do apprenticeships within our organization, which should increase the diversity because they represent this community. So I'm definitely want to support recruiting in any capacity we can. I always have. Instruction and HR work together. I've recruited. Will do anything I can. And I very much believe my past and my history and our work supports that I believe we need an equitable and diverse talent pool of employees. That's what's best for this community.
Next question.
Hi, Dr. Impeartrice.
Hello.
You know me, but I'll introduce myself. Benefit of everyone, I'm Steffi Outlaw, history teacher at Northeast High School. We have a collaborative conferencing survey that you're familiar with that stated 86% of teachers who took the survey said that Cmcss does not provide adequate time to complete their required duties within their contracted hours. how can you correct this time deficit or increase compensation to pay teachers for their time?
And I think both of those, we are working on collaborative conferencing, but I do support the compensation piece, and I certainly do. So as we continue through that process of looking at the data, I certainly support, there are districts out there that are able to do it. So if we're covering a lot of classes and all that, I think we've got to explore that and have some action behind that piece. I really do. And it's been mentioned in collaborative conferencing, but I do think there's some urgency of that study. I would agree with that. As far as not being able to complete your work duties within your contracted hours, I think COVID has exacerbated that, but it's not the only cause. I mean, I think all teachers, including myself as a teacher, 6 years ago I was in the classroom when I made that transition back. All teachers have worked past their contracted hours. I'm not saying it's right or it's justified, I'm just saying that's one of those professions where you're doing what you have to do to get the job done. But I think during COVID, what's happened is with some of those workforce shortages, it's exacerbated the teachers to even a bigger degree. And so I think that's why we've talked in collaborative conferencing about genuinely, what can we take off the plate? And we examined some of the lesson planning. I think we can do that at a deeper level, but we'll have those conversations on Tuesday. But are really based on your survey and what's coming to you as we said in collaborative conferencing. What are the 4 things that we can take off a teacher's plate and focus on strategically next year and make it rise to the level of our strategic work? So included in the monthly questions with principals, have professional development around it, monitor it. So I know when the survey came out and we'd already talked to principals about lesson plans, it wasn't necessarily represented in the survey. So then we've got to monitor it more, right? And we've got to educate more and make sure it's happening. We can't afford to lose you guys. You guys are the backbone. And I know you've got extreme stress and trying to manage your time and having time for your family, which is the most important thing to do. The only way I know to do something is to work at it, keep the data, develop a plan, and monitor it, and keep it as a priority. And I think that's what we're working towards in collaborative conferencing. But I want those 4 areas to come from you guys and the teachers. We're not going to influence that. I want those to come from you. What are you hearing? What are 4 areas that we can help assist take off the plate of teachers? We started talking about this in October, some in November. We met with our academic coaches during mid-year review. You gave us a lesson plan idea. Also talked about ELA and the STEM questions that were coming. I asked the same question of the academic coaches and consultant teachers. You're with these teachers every day. What is causing them stress? What is causing them burnout? What is not allowing them to get to what they need to get to? They mentioned the ELA STEM questions too. So Emily's team's been working on that. She showed you some of that work. That's the kind of actionable process I believe we need. We can't afford to lose anybody. You've invested in this career. This has been a unique time. If take away COVID for 2 years for everyone, I wouldn't do that. But it has exacerbated the challenges of being in the classroom. And it's exacerbated the challenges of being in operations, driving a bus, all across. The workforce shortages have just been immense. But it does fall on the back of teachers covering classes and having more kids in your class. And that's not a quality education, and that's not a quality way for teachers to spend their time. So, I don't know, the direct answer of how we solve all this workforce shortage, but I do say this, ideas can come from the outside. And Many of the ideas and innovations we know, those are examples of research that's come from the outside, but the solutions are within. The solutions are in this community, or in this district, if you're willing to roll up your sleeves and seek those solutions and invite a collective group of people to help you do that. So it's a priority, and I think you know it's a collaborative conversation. We talked about it. We can't be urgent enough with it. So I do want you to hold us accountable for what we say we're going to do. And we need to align it, monitor it, seek more input, and just continue to work in those areas. But I do value and appreciate the time that you guys are dedicating to your students and the education of the kids.
Hi, Dr. Impeartrice. We, of course, work together in collaborative conferencing. For those who don't know, I'm Melissa Lindsay. I'm an English teacher at Montgomery Central High School. And I want to follow up some more with some of the survey questions that we've been discussing. So in our most recent survey, 91% of teachers who responded to our survey, which was over 400, about 450 teachers, make up that 91%. 91% of teachers said that student behavior impedes their ability to do their job. 61% said that occurred on a daily basis. And student behavior was also the #1 reason that 402 teachers reported considering alternate employment. So what can be done to help teachers with those level 1 offenses, those offenses that take place inside our classrooms that add to those things on our plate, that we're talking about?
The category 1 offenses, yeah. And
Yes,
so
please.
with the community survey that was done on the code of conduct, 40% of that survey was answered by certified personnel. And it was clearly stated in that survey that they wanted to reduce the number of infractions before an office referral happened. So I think in most cases, it was like four infractions with communication. They also changed the type of communication, which we worked on in collaborative conferencing. So in what we presented to the board, which is going to be on the agenda, the 10th, we moved any offense that was up to 4 on the second offense that could be referred. So pretty much as a teacher, I'll deal with it once, but I will deal with it twice, right? I'll cancel them once for category 1 offenses. Offenses that were developed in that category by what teachers, representative teachers told us, these are things we usually take care of in the classroom. But so that's how we respond.
Hi, Dr. Impeartrice. I'm Dr. Young, one of the school psychologists here in the district. And I know there has been discussion about the workload of teachers and how we can retain them. You also mentioned that you measure the success of principals as well. As director of schools, would you consider investigating or measuring the dissatisfaction in school leadership or principals in buildings, using it as a variable with workload when investigating teacher retention? Because although teachers are leaving to work elsewhere, the workload is hard for teachers everywhere right now.
I want to make sure I understand your question. Are you saying that we probably have pockets of schools that you think increased workload is being put on teachers by principal expectations? Is that what I'm hearing?
It can be that, or you can use, workload is one variable, and the dissatisfaction of school leadership, how principals may run the school.
Yeah, thank you. And so I don't know if you were here during my interview. So I'm part of a national working group from the American Association of Educator Employers. And it's all based on teacher retention. And so they bring in the latest research around teacher retention. And at the same time, I was exposed to this program of research at both sides at in HR. It's a program called Upbeat. And it is in our budget, and we will be implementing it next year. It's a third-party program that surveys teachers around research-based retention characteristics. So in October, a survey would go out to classified educators as well, classified staff as well as teachers. And we would get individual scores in teacher autonomy, the health and safety of the classroom, all those pieces that lead into teacher retention come with an aggregate score. It's a third party, so we never see the submission of the survey, we just see the results. That company will do another administration in March, but in between the October and the March timeframe, really October and December, what they have is a planning process. So those principals take that information about teacher retention and where they're weak and where they're strong, and then develop a plan around that. So what I equate it to is, you know, as a psychologist, when you give a test, you can get all the way down to the question level, right? But for teacher retention, we don't have a metric. We have word of mouth, but we don't have a metric that shows.
Hey, what's up, everyone? My name is Anthony. You didn't see
Sorry. We will now have a metric. And so it comes with coaches, and the company that created it hired former administrators that were excellent at culture within the field, developing culture. So not only it comes with a toolkit for each identified area for the principals. So we'll look at it, and where we see themes across the district, we'll also do professional development, like we would with the LA or something else. So for the first time, we're gonna have a tool that specifically measures the characteristics of teacher retention and the view of the staff regarding what's going on in their school. I can tell you this, and Janine Johnson knows, there's nothing more impactful on a culture than the leader. There is nothing more impactful, I get that. There have been times when I've been dissatisfied with the situation. I think Janine and I have worked together in those situations, very high expectations. And the reason I have high expectations is because I was a principal. And I had a strong culture. And I had the mutual respect of my teachers and my classified staff. So why would I expect anything less from somebody else, right? And so when a culture of a school goes south and we lose all of these qualified people because they go elsewhere, that's impacting student achievement. It's impacting lives. Okay? People start to question whether they want to stay in the profession. So my tolerance level for that is not high. I will be very transparent with you. I know Janine and I have worked together on this in many cases. And they're not fun cases because I was a level director, and you can go into a school and get a window into what that school is, but unless you're in that school day in, day out, you really don't know. I'm gonna be honest with you. So some of the most effective principles I thought were going to be effective, sometimes they weren't. I made a minor mistake, I won't. But it took a while for me to discover. And the impact that it makes on the culture of the school is huge. And so, you know, we're all accountable. Right? We're all accountable. Nobody's less accountable than anybody else. So how you run your school and the way in which you treat your staff is vitally important. And I think Constance and Kathy can vouch to the point that if they have given me a situation, I have investigated it with urgency. So both Kathy and Constance will text me at a moment's notice and come get a response. And we'll investigate. And then we meet with Angela and Janine Johnson on a monthly basis. So that open door policy is there. In fact, gotta give Kathy credit when she's the one that gave us the idea to have senior level staff sub in buildings when there were emergency subs, right? She brought it up in one of our meetings. This is what you need to do. They both know they can be frank with us. They're representing the teachers. The teachers need to be represented. It's a tough time. We don't have all the answers. We're going through a very difficult time. It's very stressful. But what we can influence and control, we need to influence and control for the betterment of the teachers, for the betterment of the students.
Good evening, Dr. Impeartrice, Impeartrice, teacher at Kenwood Elementary. This question goes kind of with what you were just saying. Who oversees directors' advocacy, department heads' advocacy? How can department heads and directors respond to the needs of those under them to be improved and addressed? Teachers receive evaluations, principals get 360s. Yes, yet many directors or department heads do not receive evaluations directly from educators. And sometimes those directors or department heads have not been in the classroom for a while, and they can seem unapproachable or out of touch. So how would you address handling that situation?
Sure. Now, are you talking about like our level directors?
Yes.
Okay. And so, our level directors do receive 360s, and they're from the principals. They're not from the teachers, they do receive 360s. They are in buildings a lot, but I oversee them. So if somebody has an issue with the level director, the next chain of command would be me. And feel free to reach out to me if you have a concern. I will say this, I said this in my interview. Here's what I know about those level directors, and none of us are perfect. I'm not perfect, nobody's perfect. But every one of those level directors has been a level 5 principal, and every one of those level directors recently has been in the school where we had to replace a principal and had a transition and work day to day in that school with the administrative staff. In fact, Janine will attest to this, when we did have to transition a principal, and we talked to the people that were impacted by that, one of the suggestions they said is, don't throw a new principal into a building without a real strong transition plan. So what we've been doing is those level directors have been transitioning that administrative team. They've been spending time there. So I'm not here to discount what you're asking. There's a chain of command, I'd be happy to look at anything. Everybody's accountable, including myself. But they do have experiences. They have worked in schools, and they've done it this year. Every one of them has done it this year. Doesn't mean we're perfect, doesn't mean we're right, doesn't mean something doesn't need to be looked into. But you probably don't have that information, so I can get you that. Yes.
Hi, I'm Emily Clay. I teach at Barnes-Darden Elementary School, and I'm a talker, but I'm also a listener, and I've heard you say some things about recognizing teachers are working a lot outside of their contract hours and that compensation is something that you're for. But I also know it's very quick in popular culture, and I've even heard it in this room to say teachers are in it because it's a calling and they're in it for the outcome and we do it for the kids, which is true. But as a director, you'll be kind of the face of the district, and a lot of the weight for making sure we retain teachers and have the right messaging out there will be on you. So when the Rotary calls or a legislator or whomever, how are you going to bridge that gap when they say, oh, it's a calling for those teachers, don't worry about the pay?
I think, well, first of all, I'm going to be transparent in a collaborative conference. I don't have to. I had said that teaching is a calling. I do believe I was called to teach. And I do believe that people that go into that profession have a special will, a special desire, and a special heart. That has them endure some things that maybe they don't endure in other professions. But I also realize that rubbed some people the wrong way. And I accounted for my action, right? I talked about it. So I certainly understand what you're saying. I think we're in a situation right now, like I said, where COVID has exacerbated all of this. Doesn't mean it wasn't there, doesn't mean it's not something we should have always dealt with. But I don't have any problem speaking to anybody about the challenges teachers are facing in the classroom. My wife taught for 40 years in special ed. My first teaching assignment, I was with Ward and Court kids. I get it. I do. What's experiencing on a more global basis right now in the classroom, I experienced the most extreme when I started teaching. It's not fun. It makes you question your job. It makes you grow and develop in many ways that I didn't anticipate growing so fast. But the reality is right now, we can't afford to lose any teacher that's motivated to teach. And that is my commitment. That's why we institute that. That's why I want to continue to look at those trainings and those working conditions and make them strategic planning. But yeah, I said that, and if that offended you, I apologize. But I think I did that in the meeting, but I'm going to be transparent. You're not going to hear something from me. I mean, I'm not working, but I do value, and I do value the teachers, and I think my career has demonstrated that.
Hello, Dr. Impeartrice. I'm Constance Brown. I'm the success coach at Early Technical College. And I want to ask you to expound upon something you said in your interview with the board. You've been in this district a long time, but you said that it was important if you did get selected as director of schools to come in as you were an outsider and look at things from a fresh perspective. And I agree with that. But as someone who has been in the district a very long time, what are some things that you think you can do that will actually allow you to have a fresh look or a fresh take on things going on in the district?
Yeah, I think you saw my interview. Anytime I entered a new position, I was right, and that's what I plan on doing within the first 90 days. So I think in doing that, the danger of being an inside candidate is you think you know what's going on in the district. This position is different, just like what's stated here. I don't just represent instruction, I represent all departments. And I'm also the leader of the district if I was selected and need to push the appropriate work. And the only way to push the appropriate strategic work is to know what people are thinking and feeling and where those trends lie. And so every position every leadership position that I've had, I show the evidence of it. That's what I do. That's what I'm going to do. And I said in my interview, like you said, I don't think an inside candidate is coming here and act like an inside candidate. I think an inside candidate needs to come in here and listen to the thoughts of the different stakeholder groups and what they're challenged with. And when those trends and themes emerge that we can do something about, immediately we do it. Those themes emerge as areas that we have to have more strategic planning around, then we do it. But I think the one strength that I've developed in the last 5 years in this county is partnership. I'm not opposed to calling on anybody in this community to partner with us to solve some of these problems. My first meeting with Austin P about the teacher residency pathway was, hey, we both have a common goal here. And to explain what I wanted to try to do with them. And their first response was, we can't do that. I said, well, why can't you do that? Because we don't offer education classes at night. And I said, well, if we get you 40 candidates, you can't offer education classes at night? Yeah, I think we could do that. So if that's not a knock on Austin P, that's partnership, right? We both come at it from different perspectives, but if we have a common goal to support our resources in this district, both, physical resources as teachers and tangible resources, then if it rises to the level of work that needs to be done for the betterment of this organization, then we need to find a way to do it. And we need to partner and leverage every aspect of the community to try to make that.
We have about 15 more minutes, so we can take some other questions. Before we take some questions from those who've already asked, I want to see if there's anybody else who hasn't had a chance to ask a question who would like to.
Hello, my name is Kathy Cobb, and I'm a 42-year veteran seasoned teacher at Clarksville-Montgomery Elementary School.
Yes.
And as you and I both talked many times before, special education is our heart.
Yes.
And listening to teachers across the district this year, especially, there have been so many issues of discipline dealing with those special needs friends of ours. And in turn, they get sent to alternative school. Some of them do, some of them don't. This one piece is a domino effect in many cases, because when they're kept in the classroom, then the teachers can't do their instruction. And those other students who aren't discipline problems, they lose their instructional time. And then that stresses upon the teachers. That also affects their scores, their achievement scores. And that in turn affects the special educators' achievement scores. So it's just such a domino effect. I'm wondering if the next year or two that there are thoughts or ideas of how we can maybe restructure an alternative school. You know, I've talked about that before, for the base camp, because it all affects that one piece.
Yeah, and I think we brought in a company probably about 6 years ago that really, we used them for a year and really restructured how we do alternative school. We do those restorative circles, and we do a lot of SEL pieces that we didn't do in the past. A lot of training's gone into it. So I'm happy with the environment that's created at alternative school. In fact, sometimes you have kids that are being successful there that don't want to leave. I think the challenge is the increase in behavior spikes so much that we weren't able to have spots for everybody that needed spots, right? That's huge. And so, and as far as elementary goes, we started base, academy for this reason some years ago. And there's a process to get in there. Some schools are more adept at intervening with behavior than others. It doesn't mean that the behavior is acceptable. You're at a school that's very adept at it. So when you called me the other day, I took that call, right? Because I know you're very adept at it. So I want to find a solution. So we do need to continue to explore. Dr. Evans has told me many times this year, I think we're missing a piece with alternative school. When Dr. Evans talks and listen, right? She's got a background, like I've got a background. She worked at Leeds. So we do need to investigate that. There's no doubt about it. In the meantime, we've added 9 social workers between ESSER and our budget. And we're looking at that at-risk coordinator that was brought up as we continue to ask questions in the budget process that we could pilot some schools with that would take off some of the 504 load from the counselor so they could more aptly do the 80-20 model that they're supposed to do 80% of the time on kids. So we want to look at that as we go into next year's budget. That will provide not only 504 assistance, but behavioral assistance right in the classroom, in the school, as opposed to a number of behavior consultants that serve many schools, right? So I think it's worthy of a pilot, and we didn't, when we got the feedback, the social workers were really being emphasized hard, and we need them, no doubt about that. But as we asked more questions, what really emerged is we need more support in the school around behavior, not just social work. And so that was an item in the budget that didn't get funded, that when the principals met together in their clusters, they said, if we can fund this, if more funds come in, we do it every year, we want you to focus on this. So we're focused on it. We will make some adjustment with existing staff to look at our data at the schools that may need it the most. We will make some adjustments this year with some existing staff, perhaps using some title money to pilot and look at future budgets to provide some more immediate support in that area.
One more question, sir. I believe a statement was made that low SES status should not impact achievement levels. Although all students should be afforded the same opportunity in the district, research has shown that there are variables that impact lower SES students versus those who come from middle and upper classes. You have single working mothers and fathers, parents who work early and get off late, being unable to assist the students with assignments, if they are even given take-home assignments. parents who are impacted by their own learning disabilities and unable to understand the child's assignment. Parent support is not often happening like in affluent schools. Disproportionality of student suspensions. Minority students are suspended at a much alarming higher rate than other children. And I wanted to ask, as director of the schools, which would be more important to you? Focusing on the reputation of schools, such as high achievement scores and positive trend numbers, or focusing on the reality of what is needed to support the students and equipping the students and teachers with what they need to serve all students within the building?
So what's most important to me is looking at every school and developing opportunities and resources that the data suggests they need. So one of the things we just talked about would be looking at those positions in the lower socioeconomic schools. When we introduced teacher residency to the schools, it was in the 5-level socioeconomic school because it brought additional hands into that school. We saw behaviors decrease in those schools because there was more attention being given to kids. So equity does not mean the same. Equity means looking at individual schools and what they need. Years ago, I was part of the team that reconstituted the school in this district. And that school won the SCORE award 2 years later. So I don't have any problem looking at individual schools and what they need and arranging resources. We've done it, and some schools do that. The Title I budgets of some of the lower socioeconomic schools, especially in elementary, are pretty significant, around $350,000. And so their teams have also come with their unique needs, with money that's set aside for that purpose to provide extra assistance and extra hands. There's no doubt that if you're going to provide an equitable education for all students, you can't look at all students the same. You've got to differentiate that support. And I think with the position I just talked about, we're going to use existing funds, that's exactly what we're doing. When we rolled out teacher residency pathway, that's what we've done. When level directors consult with the title schools about what they're going to discuss in their committee, look at that data and see what you need most. Because that's what I've overseen title for 15 years. And when I first came to this district, what I saw with title money is people spending on stuff. There were books everywhere, right? Libraries everywhere. Sometimes you go into a school and there were books that weren't even unpacked, right? And then we shifted to, people make more of a difference than resource, an additional resource. And when the teacher shortage wasn't here, we reduced a lot of class sizes, or they used their title money to reduce class sizes. But then, when the teacher shortage hit, they really couldn't do that, so we shifted some of that to teacher residence. But I'll give you a perfect example. Kenwood Middle School hired an RTI coach to help their teachers get to the skill level in ELA and math. They weren't even able to hire that coach till like October of last year. Their RTI data was twice more successful than any other middle school in the district, because they use their title funds to focus on intervention. Wonderful way of doing it. To the point that I went down to the school, looked at what they were doing, how they were assisting their teachers in intervention. The middle school teachers are not trained at the same level I talked about that I was trained on reading intervention, to teach sound simple and fluency, and they were doing it. They were doing it because somebody pulled the resources for them and taught them how to do it and identified the kids. They took all that legwork out for the teachers, and they did it, and they supported it. To the point when ESSER funds came up, we funded an RTI coach for every middle school. Based on that model, only if they agreed to have the fidelity that Kenwood Middle School did. So the intervention team trained them, they're in the middle schools right now. Innovation comes from many places, but if you want equity, innovation definitely needs to come from the district, but it also comes from funds that can be used for that, right? Like I said, Kenwood Middle School did a communication plan where they got their parents to sign up for free or reduced lunch. It increased their total budget $350,000. He was able to do a lot with that. He had an SEL coach to do it, okay? So there are ways to get to this equity that are definitely supported by the district, and then there are times that the district has to support it. But the mindset of equity needs to come from the top, right? And I've done that my whole career. My schools demonstrate. Every one of my subgroups when I was a principal was over a year's worth of growth. Every one of the quintiles. I started an intervention team before RTI in 2003. I wanted to have we were the targeted school. I wanted to have the best value-added scores because I felt like achievement's one thing. We need to be committed to growing kids more than a year. Take them from where they are and move them forward. So I researched and I found out that Maryville Middle School had 10 years of straight A's and value-added. So I brought a team out to Maryville Middle. And basically what they were doing was double dipping. Any kid that was a 45th percentile or below in ELA or math was put in a self-contained classroom with teachers that were trained in Iowa strength, in Lindenwood Bell, in Orton Gillingham. And I picked my honors teachers to do it because they had a pebble in their shoe that they wanted kids to succeed. They were going to push them. Our value add, and then once the kids, part of the time were on Odyssey software that identified their learning gaps and tried to close those gaps, and then the teachers taught them the content standards at the grade level. The minute they were at grade level, then we started giving the teacher that we were going to transition them to the work and have them make assignments so they could see they could do the work. They knew their ticket out. So we had kids that were never identified in special ed of all ethnicities that grew more than a year because we addressed their gaps at the time with qualified teachers. I did it with existing staff. It meant higher class loads for my core teachers, but they were happy because their range wasn't so big in the classroom. And when they did get a kid back, they knew they could do the work. And the kids were happy because there was a ticket out. We weren't going to put you in intervention and keep you there for year after year after year. We were going to have a teacher that pushed you to give you the right exposure and the right methodology to get you caught up. The parents that I run into to Franklin today that were in those classes have tears in their eyes because they became the starting high school quarterback that would have never passed high school. But early intervention is the key. Always is the key. And early intervention is equity. Early intervention is equity. For somebody to get at grade levels, expectations and above, that's the most equitable thing you can do for a student. Is give them a chance to compete with others.
Thank you. Thank you all for your questions. That is going to be our time, but Dr. Impeartrice wanted to give you if you have just a minute, anything that you want to end with? Last minute.
Just appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for the time. I do have an open door policy whether I get this job or not. I'll always respond. I think Kathy and Constance know that. Anybody that's ever reach out to me, whether it's a community member or whether it's a teacher, other personnel. I believe that if somebody has something to say, they need to be heard. And I'm committed to that. May not always agree, that's fine, but it doesn't mean what you're saying is about, it isn't listened to. So I just leave you with that. That's been my leadership style, will always be my leadership style when I get this job or die. And it's been an honor to work with Constance. It's a value fit. We're not where we want to be right now. I get that. I'm under no illusion to be up here saying we're learning right now. COVID has set us back, but we're going to get there. We're going to get there. I know we're going to get there because we've done it before. And it happens in the classroom, there's no doubt about that. Any success we have is because of that teacher's interaction with the classes. No doubt.
Thank you all. You all have a safe